Welcome to the Profitable Farmer Podcast, where it's all about increasing the profitability of your farm by working smarter, not harder. And now your host, business expert, Andrew Roberts.
Very excited to have Terry Tran back from the Freedom Trader. How you going, Terry?
Extremely well. Thank you, Andrew, for having me back.
Mate, it's great to have you back as always, and love talking to you and really about this topic of investing off farm. And today we're going to cover these three key reasons that farmers make world-class investors. Now, Terry, you're working with a lot of farmers.
Yes, I am. We've got about just over 100 farming families now, and usually it's also the husband and wife working together. So in actual fact, we've probably got about 200 farmers that we're now actively teaching and educating, which is awesome.
Oh, mate, it's fantastic. And the reason I wanted to do this podcast with you, I mean, you and I spoke offline about this, and you just feel or see that they really have the personality traits to succeed in investing, particularly in share investing, Terry. So is this a generalization, or is this common across most of these farmers that you're working with? Is it something that you can see that, wow, they've got the really the skills or the gifts? What is it before we drill down into the three areas, what is it from a bigger picture that you sense that farmers can make, better traders, better investors?
It's actually quite interesting because I've, as you know, I was referred the one farmer a number of years ago actually from yourself, Darren Fiona Sanders. Yes. And from there, I just saw them start growing, and their returns / performance is nothing short of extraordinary, actually. And over time, because we've now got quite a number of farmers, and just looking across the board, because we've got over 500, almost 600 students now, and a lot of them, of course, are farmers. And just from looking at purely performance-wise, it just seems like the consistency is coming from the farmers. And I think it's really because of not just only the skill, because of course we teach the skill, but so everyone has the same skill. But on the psychological front, the farmers seem to have a much bigger advantage compared to city folk like myself, because they've been, I'm not sure whether they've been born with it, but because of their daily life experiences on the farm and how they run the farm, their psychological makeup is a very big advantage of that. And one of them is, for example, like patience, things like that. Yeah,
well, listen, I mean, I'm keen to rip straight into these because you shared with me the three reasons, and when you compare it to farming, it's of course essential to have these, if you like, personality traits to succeed in farming, Terry. So let's just focus on that first one that you just mentioned, patience.
Yes.
And let's just firstly look at why is that so important in farming, and then why is that such an important trait to have to succeed in investing?
Yeah, I think with farming and trading is very similar. In a way, it's quite similar because ultimately we are both on both ends. On the farming front, your farmers are either growing crops or buying and selling, for example, cattle, herds of cattle, sheep, example. On the trading front, very similar as well, because all we are doing is something very similar. We're buying stock and also selling stock. But rather than being extremely active, the makeup of a farmer is there, that we talk about the patience. They're able to, for example, plant seed and let it grow. And then when there's always a time to plant and there's also always a time to harvest, exactly the same as investing. There's always a time to buy stock, certain times that you don't even touch stock at all. And there's also certain times where you should be selling stock. So it's exactly the same. And in that patience allows them to do that without that impatience of most city folk possess.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true, isn't it? You have to plant the seed if you're a cropping farmer, and you have to patiently wait for ideally some rain to come to help that seed out, and then obviously that seed's going to grow, and then there's a time to harvest. And if you were to look at an impatient personality, Terry, I mean, I'm guessing as well you would see this across the board. So many people lack patience, therefore they never really realize their potential when it comes to investing, correct? Why is that?
I think partly it's because I think on one hand, it's probably the education. There is a lot of education out there which teach, for example, sort of daily trading, where you sort of buy stock, you need to sell stock within a certain amount of time, and you need to make money immediately. And by having that mindset straight up front, the stock market is not like that. it's more like the farming side. When you buy something, you do need to give it time for the value to eventuate. So if you're buying stock, for example, say a stock price has dropped dramatically, you take advantage of the stock price. The stock price does not immediately within the day, potentially even a few days, straight away go back up. It does take time for other value fund managers. And when I talk about value fund managers, they are the smart, I call smart money, where people like myself, we fundamentally know what something is worth. We will buy them cheap. We'll do the research, buy them cheap. And then once we buy them, we do hold on to them and allow other fund managers to then jump on board and push the price back up. And that potentially is down the track. Maybe it could be weeks or a number of months down the track. That's when we sell out and make the profit that we need to. Exactly like farming.
Yes. Oh, mate, very, very true. So this second trait that you and I spoke about, persistence. Let's talk a little bit about persistence. And mate, I mean, I would actually like for you to share with our audience your story, because I think it is a persistent story about why you actually do what you do, Terry, and the persistence of your parents, and really the trip across. You want to maybe just talk a little bit more about that, because it really is a backbone to, I think, why you do what you do. But then I want to link this back to into farming and trading, investing.
Yeah. I mean, why I do what I do is because I recall when I was in I think it's been now a couple of years ago, when I was in Adelaide at your very first, I guess at my very first farming conference that I attended, and saw, I think it was about 180 farms, almost 200 farmers in the room. And I literally had a tear come down my eye, because I realized at that point in time when I was sitting in the audience, I realized why I was actually here, because I then was able to somehow link back to the time where exactly 40 years ago, this year is my 40th year in this beautiful country of ours. And 40 years ago, Australia, plus when I looked at all the farmers' faces, I realized not themselves, but the generations that passed, their families accepted my family, or my mum and myself, into this beautiful country. And now I realize that it's just come almost like full circle, where their families have allowed our family to come to this country. And all I'm now doing is able to now give back and help and sort of pay it forward to the farming community that has given me and my family so much in this beautiful country. So it's my way of giving back and educating this farming or this country, and as well as the farmers, how to now build wealth outside their farm. So that's my biggest why now.
Very interesting, mate. Because and from a persistence point of view, I'd love for you just to share a little bit about how you got here. Because I think it really is a persistent story. And I know you speak very much about your mum and the persistence that she has.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, 40 years ago, we escaped the Vietnam War. And in the middle of the night, we basically ran. We bought a ticket with, because my father used to run a fleet of trucks. That was his own business. But when the communism came through, they took everything. So we, as a family, we were actually starving. And that's the reason why we had to leave that country back in the late 70s. And we swapped what we had left over into gold bars, and those gold bars bought ourselves a ticket to so-called freedom. So in the middle of the night, we boarded a boat. Never knew whether we'll make it or not, but it was a wooden tug, 18-meter long. But there were 300 others on top with our family. And I mean, you can imagine 300 people in an 18-meter tug. That was a rusted old wooden tug. Whether we'll make it or not is another story. But we ended up being lost in that boat ride, and in actual fact, the boat was taken on board water, so we were slowly sinking. But we were then, luckily enough, saved by a cargo ship, which transported us to a nearby refugee camp. But unfortunately, though, my father did pass away on the island, and my mum and myself, we were accepted into this beautiful country. But then I saw my mother, through sheer hard work, doing 2 jobs, working in the factory in the morning, then washing dishes at night, learning English because she came as a 22-year-old widow. She came with no English, and then also having to look after me as well. And at the same time, knowing that she herself knew that there was also the big family, because she comes from a big family of 8, and having to that longer term plan now without my father, which was really the leader of the family, but now without him, having to do the 2 jobs, save the money, send back money to Vietnam so the family at least won't starve while they were waiting. And over a period of that decade of doing 2 jobs, working in the factory, washing dishes, raising myself, being able to over time literally immigrate the entire family, the father, the mother, which is my grandparents, as well as 6 other brothers and sisters into the country. So that was a sheer persistence of a willpower of one woman that lost her husband and towing around a 2-year-old, which was me at the time.
It's an amazing story and a story of persistence, Terry, and it's something that as a client of yours through Freedom Trader, I not just myself, but so many see that you obviously have a mission, if you like, or a persistence of wanting to help people learn these skills that I think you've been blessed with, and giving back to others. Like, it's very clear to me that you've got a big why, and you really, really want to pass that skill on, if you like, to others. And I want to talk about what it is you see in farmers and why this trait of persistence that obviously your mum has, Terry, you've got it, and why you think farmers have this, and why this, and then I want you to link that to why is this so important when it comes to succeeding in investing.
I think even on looking at my own front, when I speak to farmers, I sort of share that same mentality as well, because even myself, one thing that allowed me to be where I am is it is also sheer persistence. So I learned that from my mum, but at the same time, myself, my own journey, when I started, I also learned from, I call it the wrong people that taught me in terms of investing and trading the wrong way. And initially my style was actually quite bad, where I lost over a period of 18 months, we lost just over $100,000 from doing the wrong thing or investing the wrong way. And so through that, and then having to now look for the right teachers and persisting through that, but then also seeing farmers when they go through hardship, especially now with the drought that's happened for quite a while now. So certain farmers are okay, but I know a vast amount of farmers are also suffering from the drought that this country is actually currently having as well. So seeing them also suffer through those periods of times of drought, flooding, sometimes even bad commodity prices, things like that, and then being able to persist through that, and just knowing that a brighter future, a brighter day is down the track, but being able to push through that and not giving up, that is something that I really do give it to the farmers.
I mean, it's enormous, and you're absolutely right. The persistence is there, and particularly the not giving up. And so why is this trait so important with investing?
Because with investing, just like farming, nothing is a straight line. So people think that, you invest one day, you learn all the skills, and you will succeed the next day or the next week or the next month. And I talk about the learning curve. It's logarithmic. So at first, when you get into this game, it's right away you won't see the immediate. You may not actually see the immediate returns. The ones who show that, and I don't believe that's the right thing. I actually show that experience curve where within the first usually 3-6 months, you are actually learning the skill, learning the process, and you may not see the high returns right away. But over time, as you develop the skill and you get better and better, and then you're able to experience all different market conditions, because in the end, the stock market, just like any form of investing, nothing goes up like in a straight line. There are times where you reap the rewards. There are times when the market will drop, and you will see your portfolio drop as well in terms of value. But to not be afraid of that and have the patience to wait it out, but also work it out. And in actual fact, also have the persistence to even take advantage of those periods, because when prices drop, just like farming, you take advantage of low prices and being able to, for example, buy stock or buy seeds, buy herds of cattle at a lower price, and then allowing that time period, which now comes into patience, to allow that to also go back up in value as well.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because those two really can't exist without the other, persistence and patience, really, because you need both, Terry.
Yeah, correct.
Because you're not going to probably have patience without persistence, nor persistence without patience. So what I'm hearing here is the farmers understand that they might go through a tough period, but they've got persistence to see through that, and also patience before they execute and really harvest a profitable crop, if you like, or they understand that the drought won't last. So they've got the patience to maybe stay through there and not give up during that period. So they're very much interlinked.
Yeah. I always say that both of those traits are actually very, very extremely intertwined. That
Yes.
one can't exist pretty much without the other.
Yeah. So the third trait I want to talk about process. And firstly, why is it that, well, let's talk about what do you mean by process?
For me, process is just a systemized, I guess, a system that allows you to calmly know when to take advantage of opportunities, especially when prices, for example, drop, and knowing how to evaluate companies or stocks, knowing what to buy, when to sell, and
Yes.
then following that process, allowing that process to sort of dictate so you're unemotionally attached to the market or to whatever
Yes.
you're doing. So therefore, you just know that to get from A to B, you don't have to rely on so-called gut feeling or, how do you feel about this? It's all about just following from exactly the same, sort of the action steps from the AB's basically A to Z, and it will get you from where you are now to where you want to get to.
Mm.
So it's just daily following that. Yeah.
Farmers, I will agree with you. They are really strong with this, Terry. I mean, they're very good at getting a set of instructions from my experience and what I've seen.
Mm.
And for example, going to IKEA, buying a piece of furniture, and actually following the instructions to build it.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to ask you from a generalized sense, even from looking at the general population, why do so many people struggle with that step, Terry? Struggle following instructions to a T. What
I
is
think
it?
again, this is that intertwining that. So we had the patience, the persistence,
Yeah.
and most city folk actually lack the patience. So therefore, what they usually do, and this is from my recent webinar when I was speaking, and some of the questions that came through, right? They asked me, "Oh, how do you do this and do that?" And actually, I said, "Oh, you missed." That was actually really covered in module, for example, week 2, week 3. But now they're on week 4. And what they did was they actually skipped those modules and went straight to module 4, thinking that they'll be okay with that. So,
Interesting.
which is interesting because they were given a set of instructions, but yet they selectively chose what to study or learn and what not to learn, thinking that they'll be right without having that knowledge. And then
Yeah.
just going straight for the so-called the action steps to get the result, but without the foundational learnings. And this is where farmers are extremely great at that, because they literally they get the set of instructions and they'll go through every single video, every single exercise, and they'll do it, compared to the city folk, which selectively choose because they want to speed up the process, but then end up making a ton of mistakes afterwards and paying for it.
Mate, I mean, I think it's as a business coach as well. I see this with businesses, and you're absolutely right. They think by skipping a step they can achieve the outcome quicker, which is a lack of patience, correct?
Yes.
And they might have persistence,
Mm.
but farmers have an ability to understand if we skip a step on the farm. If we miss something when it comes to planting, or if we, for example, we're looking after livestock for a year and we miss drenching them, that's going to kill off bugs, etc. It's going to cause havoc down the track. I think farmers really understand that. So as a result, they follow a proven process that can deliver a defined outcome, Terry. And what you're saying is farmers are more likely to follow those steps. I mean, even if we were to use Darren and Fiona, they're more likely to just follow it one by one, correct?
Mm.
So they may move a little bit slower. However, they're going to get a better outcome and a better result, correct?
Yes, and that's why I always tell the general population, that not the farmers, because I don't need to slow down to speed up.
Mm.
So slow down the learning process and not sort of try to rush through everything, thinking that they can speed up the result, but to actually slow down and learn everything, and in the end they'll get to where they want to get to, but in a much smoother format, without making mistakes as well as financial losses along the way. And then they have to come back to it anyway, and then learn the missing steps. So they're actually taking much far longer than the farmers, for example, which is actually quite interesting. Yeah, and what you said was correct. What a system is ultimately is having a process-driven format that creates a defined result at the end.
Yeah.
And that is what farms are so good at. They follow everything to the T, and at the end, they'll get the defined result.
Yes. Take the emotion out of it as well, Terry, because let the system distinguish whether an investment's worth taking or not. Because really, so many people might be down at the pub and they'll hear someone talking about a particular stock, and they think, great. And without having any form of process or system behind them at all, they'll go out and they'll take, let's say, 40% of their money, Terry, and maybe buy that stock.
Yeah.
And straight away, what you teach and what you've learned is straight off the cuff. There's just craziness in that particular methodology in investing.
Yes.
Correct. Number one, you've got a system around position size.
Yes.
Correct. So only putting a small percentage of your money into a share, and you have a system around, here are the indicators that need to be in place for when you actually buy a stock. Correct.
Yes.
A system around, here's what needs to happen before you sell a stock. So I feel that really what you've created with the Freedom Trader is a proven process, would be fair to say, of if you were to follow this and follow it to a T, you'll succeed. And you've got patience and you've got persistence. If you put the effort in, if you follow my process, follow my system, it will produce a desired result for you.
Yeah, correct. And it's also producing the desired result with also dramatically also reducing the risk as well.
Yes.
So the other, taking the emotion out of it and having so-called gut feeling of, what would work or what won't work. Sometimes it works, but majority of the time it actually doesn't work through gut feeling. But having a defined system that just takes you there, but at the same time, that system also allows you to therefore dramatically reduce the risk because you're following the system and not blindly either taking tips or following other people.
So a farmer who works big hours, Terry, there's a lot of things outside their control on farming, as you know, weather, prices, etc.
Yes.
Let's assume they decide to learn the skill of trade of investing.
Yes.
Through you. We'll talk about your upcoming online training shortly, but they put the effort, they put the time in, they had the patience, they've got the persistence, they follow the process.
Yes.
Let's fast forward 10 years and let's just look at what could life be like for that person? What could they create over a decade if they honor these three traits, learn the skills, and implement?
My dream is not to necessarily have farmers, for example, quit their farm and sort of move everything away from farming all the way into the investing side. My dream is actually, the main thing is that I do this is I understand that a lot of the farmers are also generational farming, where a lot of the farms have been passed on from their families and they want to keep that going, which is actually awesome, because I think that's what our country does need, the farmers, and a lot of people are not aware of that, which I find quite sad. The farmers are extremely important to our economy and to our country. So my dream for farmers is that they create this portfolio over time. And when I say over time, that decade you're talking about, and every year, in terms of success, if I can see farmers creating, say, a double-digit type, 10% plus type portfolio, 10, 15, 20% per annum, but consistently doing it and not have the risk where, in one year they might do well and then the other year they lose a bunch of money. But it's just that consistency, and even in bad times, they might be flat, for example, but yet the years after they'll dramatically improve their performance. Sometimes, for example, even 25, 30% per annum, and that's very possible as well. So over time, if they can compound their wealth, have another portfolio that allows them over a decade, the farming then therefore becomes just also another, the portfolio will therefore provide or potentially either supplement or even replace the farming income that they've always generated. So farming on one hand is the cash flow, the other side is the asset base, but that will also produce cash flow at the same time once it gets to a certain number as well.
Yeah, so they've got the ability to take a lot of risk away, Terry. So if they do experience, a number of years of dry or drought and zero income off the farming, they've got another income that they can rely on, which just gives them peace of mind. Correct?
Yeah, correct. And that's where one of my main goals is to have them take the risk out of farming. So therefore, no matter what happens on the farm, they're always themselves and their family are always safe, because they've always got this very powerful portfolio on the side that will take care of themselves in the bad times of farming, whether it may be on the weather related, on the drought, the flooding, things like that, or bad commodity prices, or even I know some farmers are also getting squeezed by the big the grocery chains like the Coles and the Woolworths. But having this portfolio supplement and take care of their family in those times, that is my ultimate dream, if I can help them do that.
And Terry, really last question, but you don't need enormous amounts of money to start either, do you? Like you can start relatively with a small amount of cash flow to begin investing. It's not like you need millions of dollars, for example, to start investing.
No, not necessarily. And even with the students that come to me and they say, they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars and they want to invest it right away, I say, no, hang on there. You want to slow it down. Make sure that you get the process right, and it will take 3-6 months to actually learn the process and get that going. And it's that big myth that you need big money to make big returns. No, you don't. What you do need, though, is you need to actually start right away, because even a small amount of cash flow, and when I say small, I'm talking about $100, $200 a week. And you treat that almost like a savings plan. So whatever cash flow you're able to draw out after net of all the expenses, and that's free cash flow, where a lot of businesses as well as farmers, what they generally will do is you should have a rainy day fund where there's an emergency cash fund where if you need it, you've got it. But on the other hand, anything excess of that, rather than just putting it in the bank and earning a piddly 1 or 2% per annum, that cash flow can now start generating a far bigger return. And I'm talking about the 10, 15, 20% per annum on that cash, no matter how small it is.
Exactly. And you've got a lot more control over your money, Terry, rather than whacking it into some institution that takes big percentage cuts. And really, in many ways, what I've learned from investing in those types of vehicles, when you dig underneath the surface, the people investing my money they don't have a proven process either. They're just sort of winging it themselves. That's what I get very frustrated about when I'm allowing someone else to grow my money. Really, how much research have we all done to actually look at, well, what system are they using? How much training have they got? And because I'm learning more and more, having been a student of yours, that you actually teach us to become really very world-class investors through your process, mate. That's what you do. You're empowering the mums and dads to take ownership of what they do with their hard-earned money, and you help them grow that money at in my opinion, a higher return than what I could do, even putting it through a so-called share investor, someone else is going to look after money. So, mate, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so patience, persistence, process, Terry. Now, I know there's an online training free webinar coming up. I'm probably putting you on the spot here.
Sure.
Do you know the URL off the top of your head?
It's basically www.thefreedomtrader.com and then /farm wealth, all one word.
www.thefreedomtrader.com /farm wealth.
Correct.
One word. We will put the details on our website, everyone. If you find this podcast on farmownersacademy.com, you'll be able to also link through to that. But really, what can people expect from that online training, Terry? What's the it's a free, but what do people get out of it?
This is one of my signature events where I just love educating. So what people get out of it right away, within that 90 minutes, by the time they get out of it, they'll know straight away going forward. If someone ever gives them a tip about a stock or a potential investment, the 4 criteria they need to look out for, the numbers, the main numbers that actually matter, and you can literally choose and know whether the investment or the tip that they've been given, whether that's actually even worthwhile looking to research further, and knowing what to buy, basically what to buy, and even more importantly, what to avoid going forward. So, just focusing on the best investments that's out there and letting go of everything else.
Very, very powerful, Terry. I've done the training and will be also on there. So really recommend it to farmers to come along and learn about how to go about this. Do you have any concluding comments you'd like to share to the farmers listening to this podcast, Terry?
Yeah, I think it's vitally important that farmers understand that that it's just from seeing with so many farmers now and seeing a lot of the issues that's happening, especially with the weather-related, I call it disasters that's happening right now. It is extremely important that they start thinking about their future in terms of diversifying away from not just the farm, still running the farm, that provides a lot of cash flow in good times, but in bad times having something else that will generate wealth outside the farm so their family and themselves are always looked after no matter what, and to begin it right away. Because for myself, I think that the word compounding, it needs time. So the sooner that they start right away, they can allow their wealth to start compounding at the right, even if it's 10, 15, 20%, they'll be surprised at the amount of wealth they'll generate over that decade plus long period of time.
Terry, it's been fantastic as per usual. Thank you so much for sharing this podcast, and look forward to seeing you on the online training, mate.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me again.
See you later, everyone. Thank you, Terry.
See you, Andrew.